Hey everyone, welcome in. It's your girl Creatively Anzi and welcome to the MG podcast. Yay! I'm here with almost a full squad and also some very special guests today. Of course, I'm here with In the Dark,
Hey guys.
Obsidian Fury,
What's going on, gang?
and OG Otaku.
Yay!
And we have two special guests from Turbo. They are going to introduce themselves much better than I will. Please introduce yourselves, our special guests.
Hey y'all, my name's Julian, at Julian Santiago, co-founder of Turbo here.
And I'm Josiah at Joe Zanza, other co-founder of Turbo.
Turbo!
Welcome in. So if you guys don't know, Turbo is a game engine and a gaming backend for making low-res sprite-based 2D games as fast as possible. They've created a game called Dungeon Dash as well, which we're going to be talking about. And so because you guys know we love different games that we love to play together. And so basically we're going to be talking about that and how they also create the two different things really, which is pretty cool. The game engine and also Dungeon Dash. So first, we love an origin story, guys. Over here at Melanin Gamers, we do love an origin story as to how people got into gaming in the first place, you know? To start things off, like, what was the first game that convinced you know what? I think I want to be a gamer. So I'll start with you, Julia.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I have a brother who's 9 years older than me, so he was always pushing games on to me. Like, we would collab on Christmas and birthday gifts to get games. I think the first game I remember playing, I mean, I had like the formative N64 experience, as a lot of folks did, and I was just blown away. Even before that, he would like make me play Mortal Kombat and stuff. I have kind of an interesting story as it relates to gaming, because I think maybe some of your audience could relate to this. I grew up in a place in the middle of the United States where game development is not common really as an industry at all. And I'll never forget when I was in third grade, I was like standing in line to go to the bathroom, like, you know, or go to a break or something. And I said, my teacher was like, "What do y'all want to do when you grow up?" And I said, "I want to make video games." And she was like, "That's not happening." She was like, "You live in Minnesota, you will never be a game developer. Think of a real job."
Wow.
And
Stop dreaming, kid.
yeah, exactly. And so so I kind of took that with me, actually, weirdly enough, like for a long time, and was just like, well, that's off the table. And I had fun playing. And I kind of think I got into game development as an idea when I started doing some software programming just for fun after graduating university. And I realized that a big way you learn like software development is just from making games. And that's when I realized, oh, this is super interesting. This is something I can do for fun. And then I moved to New York eventually and started doing some startup investing and business stuff. And I realized that there's a whole industry behind gaming, and just kind of took it from there. Yeah, I'm curious about your experience, Josiah, on it.
Yeah, my experience is funny because I didn't have any consoles growing up, actually, no gaming consoles, until maybe like, you know, almost high school. But I would play games at friends' places. And one of the first things I ever played was this console that you might not have heard of called Vectrex. It's super old school.
OG.
Yeah, it's like a
boomer alert.
Boomer alert. Yeah.
Boomer alert. It's crazy. Comments. Sorry.
It's real crazy. Y'all should Google it or TikTok it or whatever. But this Vectrex was like basically this vector-based console. It only drew lines really, and it was black and white. And if you wanted color, you put a plastic overlay on top of the TV monitor. And the TV monitor was not an external TV monitor. It was like a little built-in TV monitor that hooked with a curly cord to a controller with 4 buttons and a little joystick. So anyways, that was like one of the first gaming things I played.
Josiah's actually 90 years old. I don't know if you can tell from his voice.
Yeah, so actually from the not the 1900s, the 1800s.
Yeah.
I believe, yes.
He doesn't age. It's his X-Men gene. He doesn't age, but
yes,
he is. Yeah.
I'm an AI.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yes. So anyways, that's like outing myself here at my age, but yeah, I played that a bit, and then also I played some other old stuff you probably haven't heard of called like Commander Keen and Jazz Jackrabbit. These are like old games for like DOS and like you know, old Windows games. Also some of the old Mac games like Oregon Trail and stuff like that.
Of course.
You know, when you're in the school library back in the day, you know, that kind of stuff. So anyways, games were always a thing. Treasure Mass Storm, another amazing classic. So I was raised on the classics is what I'm trying to say. Unk. Yeah, kids don't have appreciation for real games these days. No, no. So I played a bunch of obscure stuff that made me want to, do games and things, but I never actually touched any gaming stuff until high school, and that was Macromedia Flash. That's what it was before Adobe bought Flash, and eventually Steve Jobs killed it. And that was 2D games, and there was a lot of websites that had Flash games for a long time on the internet before the industry got kind of like consumed by these platforms like Steam and the App Store. So we had this very heterogeneous, like, weird indie web distribution oriented games situation originally, and that's what made me very interested and what made it accessible to me. And over time, I kept with software engineering. I worked at a gaming company previously called Parsec. It's parsec.app, and it was like low latency remote desktop streaming for games, for basically playing like emulator games, multiplayer across the internet. And so that basically all this stuff shaped me into wanting to start a company that helps people make games more quickly, helps them make games that can be put on the web easily, and helps people make it less complicated, because game development got super complicated. And now we think we need tens or hundreds of millions of dollars, and like tens or hundreds of people, and we need to like spend years script writing and doing all these things to make a game that's worth playing. But I kind of essentially reject that, and I think we should make a lot more games that are a lot smaller, a lot more quickly, and we should take it a lot less seriously, and we should have fun, and we should support each other in those games. It doesn't have to be a mass popular thing for it to be valid and for it to be fun.
No,
Very
definitely.
true.
Nice, I agree.
Yeah, there's sorry, Anzi, you obviously lead, but like I've got millions of questions. So I'll let you go ahead.
I was gonna say, is that one of the reasons why you guys created Turbo, for that very reason that you said, because you want game development to be more accessible to people?
Yeah, absolutely. And the irony is that it has become more accessible, but the tools are so general purpose that actually it becomes a little bit hard for people to get started, because you are usually onboarded into a large, game engine, like let's say like Unity, and like no shade to Unity or anything like that, but it just does a lot. So in order to get going, like you have to do a lot. So Turbo, it's like, the biggest barrier is you have to know a little bit of code, or you have to be willing to learn how to code a little bit. But other than that, it's a very easy entry point.
Yeah, it's like so many people have fun ideas and they want to make games and they get excited about it. And making games teaches you so many awesome skills and lets you express yourself in so many creative ways. But what's really hard is nowadays it's like, oh, you want to make a game? Here's a book. And then it's like you got to like read the book about how to use insert engine here. And I think we see a huge drop off in people who could otherwise be making fun games together, just from that, how steep the learning curve is. So with Turbo, fortunately, there is no book. Hopefully it never requires you to read a book. We do support reading here. Please read. But
I was about to say, I was like, what? You're not a writer. So I was just like, what kind of...
yeah. But we don't want to like, make it that hard for people, because before we've like made music and stuff, we've been in a bunch of creative works, and we know that when like the learning curve is so steep, it can really kill your creative spirit, especially in the beginning.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, I went to university to learn games design and get a degree in it, only to be like, wow, I could have just learned this off YouTube, like, and I don't feel, I mean, go to university and learn it, but I do think there are certain things, especially within games design and the industry, you can do it yourself, handholding isn't necessarily needed. There's so
I'm the
many.
exact opposite.
Is it?
Sorry, no, go on. I'll let you finish. No, I'll let you finish. Sorry.
No,
I'm the exact opposite.
There's so many open source tools to teach yourself how to do it that you don't necessarily need a student loan debt to teach yourself how to do it.
True. But
like,
you've never been in tutorial hell.
Yeah, but like tutorial hell is something you're still gonna go through. You're not gonna turn up to a lecture and the lecturer's not gonna teach you everything there is to know about how to play and use Unity and 3ds Max and shader and all these type of things. But YouTube will, like the online tutorials for the companies will, I do think like softwares like Turbo are very much needed Like when I was at university, everyone else was struggling with yeah, Unity and other things, and I
Yeah.
found a similar software called something called Game Maker, I think it was,
Oh,
very
yeah,
simple.
Oh,
for sure.
Yeah, and like when I found Game Maker, I was like, oh, I can make some really smart games, very simple, and like
Yeah.
without all the codes in hell that everyone else in the class was going through. Like,
Well, I
and
think for us, I mean, it's funny because a lot of folks on the team also went to uni for game development. NYU, which is in our backyard, has a phenomenal program at the NYU Game Center that teaches you a lot about just like the craft of making a great game. I always say, like, when I explain it to people who aren't in gaming, I'm like, these are the people who, if you tell them to build like some AAA open world thing, they can prototype it on a piece of paper first because they understand just like
Yeah.
the very fundamentals of what makes a great game. And so I think there's many routes to get into it, and we're not prescriptive about like, do this or don't do that. But one thing I have noticed that I do think makes this accessible as well is there are a lot of people who they went to uni for other stuff. Like they might have gone for animation, they might be great illustrators and art students that like don't necessarily know how to make games, but they know how to tell stories. They know how to create amazing visual assets. And maybe even as part of a collaboration with someone using a different engine, they want to kind of get their toes wet on bringing those assets into some sort of like game-like experience. And so Turbo can be super useful for that. We found that like a lot of animators and folks from other disciplines who just like maybe they're at the point in their career they don't have the time or the resources, like you said, to go back to like uni to learn something else, they can pick up Turbo as well. And fortunately for people who are like super schooled in like how to use everything, because they've taken the time and effort to go to school for it, they also find Turbo to be really fun.
do you, I mean, do you have a like a large asset library from your community, would you say, or just like an asset library for your community to help them make games and creations that they may want to like pencil out first using basic assets and then import their own?
We have some, but actually we don't have a large asset library. What we do though is we make it very easy to use existing like sprite assets because there's a ton on the internet that you can find. So you can pretty much pull any like sprite image file into Turbo, and we added a pretty sweet Sprite integration. So for people that do these kinds of low res 2D games, that's a very popular software. And for a lot of them who are making their own pixel art, they can easily integrate Sprite files without even having to export them. So you can actually run your game in Turbo, import your Sprite file, and modify the animation while the game is running. And it kind of provides a nice workflow for those folks, and for everybody else, you can just grab whatever, like even it's not that serious. Open up whatever program you want.
And Turbo has a really nice feature, which is like small but super powerful, where it does hot reloading. So when you swap assets or when you like, make any changes, you can see them load up right on your screen. Sorry about the siren. This is like pure taste of New York here if you hear any background noise. But what's nice is that like that also makes it, especially if you're newer or you're just like maybe not quite there where you can visualize everything in your head. It doesn't really need to compile before your asset shows up or any of the changes you make to your game show up on screen. So that's really nice.
Oh,
That is really nice. Yeah,
That's
I can
really
see how that
cool.
would really help with
Mhm.
workflow.
Yeah, it's the same with the code too. It was actually one thing because, like, as I mentioned, like I started, making games back when it was like Flash days, and then I kind of tried a bunch of these engines, and I was like, these are too complicated. I want to make 2D games, and then actually one of the ones that I really enjoyed was Pico 8. It's like a really simple low res 2D game engine as well. And using it was awesome, loved it, but it had like actually like a little too much constraints for me, where it was difficult to use the editor in the program, and it didn't have these features that I was very familiar with from like web development, which hot reloading was one of them, where you're coding and you don't want to refresh the web browser every time you make an update to a web page. You want it to like refresh itself, so you don't have to switch your mouse over the window and hit that button and blah blah blah. So basically, like that's a core part of Turbo is making games fast is like also just like live coding. It's like, as you're making the game, you don't have to close the window and reopen it and compile and wait around. It's a very fluid experience by comparison. So that's like kind of the philosophy of like, you know, how we think of game development too, is it should be something that you're kind of like you know, even just vibing as you're coding, not necessarily vibe coding, but you know,
You got that flow state.
yeah, flow state,
Flow
exactly.
state.
Yeah.
Exactly.
That's really interesting.
That segues us nicely into the game that you guys have created on your engine, Dungeon Dash. If you guys would love to tell us about that, please. Obviously, I've seen it, and so have the others, but our audience.
Sure. So yeah, part of what we do is we're obviously building a gaming engine, and we're building on top of that a gaming backend. So this is like another part of Turbo's philosophy, which is like make games fast, but also we want people to be connected when they make games, when they play games. So we think that a lot of games are more fun with multiple players. And one thing that's challenging for indies is not only like making games quickly, but writing network code. That's something that a lot of people don't have the expertise to do. So our gaming backend is designed to make it easy to, you know, make these kinds of games, make online games, or make games with online services. And so Dungeon Dash was a game we built as a way to kind of dog food the gaming backend. And by dog food, I mean, you know, like eat your own dog food. That's saying that, you know, if you basically if you're making something and it's good enough for, you know, it's good enough for the dogs or whatever. So we test the things as we build them to make sure they're feasible, and we also get game devs to test them as well. And Dungeon Dash was a very early concept that is supposed to be just really simple. It's a game that is mostly a single player experience connected by leaderboards, although there is a multiplayer mode. And the overall process was kind of just me taking about a week to build this game, and then I iterated on it, you know, about a month or so. And I would just kind of you know, share it with folks who I thought would be interested in it. And the code serves as a reference for a lot of people who are making these kinds of games on Turbo. And it's also been great for us to see where we want to go next with it. And on top of that, it helped us like understand too, just like where the wrinkles are in terms of like what's simple for people, what's difficult for people. So that's kind of the origin of it. And I can definitely answer more like specific questions too.
Okay, wait. Oh, sorry. I heard a competition, so automatically that got my attention. So when you say leaderboard, like what exactly? Because I as a game, I'm also a game developer as well, and when it comes to the networking aspect of it, it just feels like zeros and ones. Like I just don't know
Yeah.
how anybody else does it. So how exactly, from first principles, do you expect to feel this niche industry when it comes to your game engine? Because there's a difference between making a game and then making a game engine, and that feels like a bigger, broader task, overarching. So how exactly would you've explained it previously, but how exactly would the networking code be used by other developers to try and create that multiplayer aspect in their games?
Yeah. So Turbo's game engine, like the 2D part of it, it has built-in like code basically to connect to our gaming backend. So one part of it is removing the friction from the process, where it's like you don't have to do a lot to even have everything ready to make a network game. So that's one part. And then the other part is removing the actual like management of the servers and things like that. So we have different servers in different parts of the world. So you get like lower latency automatically. You don't have to like configure a bunch of instances everywhere. And it's free too. So you don't have to pay for it as well. And yeah, those are like the biggest things right now, really. It's just kind of like reducing the friction, making it free and easy to manage the actual gaming backend. So you're not in the weeds of, you know, thinking about network code. You're not in the weeds of thinking about managing servers. You're more or less getting used to some code patterns of how you might work with, you know, relaying messages from one computer to another computer and stuff like that. And I think that part is like new ground for a lot of indies. So there's a learning curve there, but it's not actually as crazy as I thought it would be. A lot of folks actually like pick it up pretty quickly. And some of the things we thought would be a starting point, for instance, we learned might be like a later on thing. So we, on top of our gaming backend, we have like a virtual file system, so you can kind of save data, and you know, you can like the leaderboards and like the cloud saves and things like that. Those live in like, you know, files you create in the virtual file system. And what we realized was actually there's like you know, before you even get to that, just having a game you hop into with like real-time messaging is simpler. And so even if your game's ephemeral and it doesn't last for a long time, that's a great starting point for devs. So I think, yeah, just like learning what is the right thing to break through and make it easy for folks is something we're still, you know, learning every day, and it's a fun process, I think, and it's rewarding because when you hit it, you see the spark go off in people's like eyes, you know, and they're very happy and proud of what they did, and you're like, oh, okay.
Someone
Like,
once said like the magical moments when you see someone move something on your screen and it's not from your computer, you know? And I think
Yeah.
thematically we want to provide the same thing, right? We all know the magical moment of like your first time getting someone to move on a screen on your own with your first game engine, whatever it may be. And like this is kind of we want to provide that same experience for folks who've never built a network game before. And all of a sudden, you know, they're capable of it, which is cool.
Really cool. So
Yeah.
to be cheeky,
Mm.
is there perhaps a boot camp down the line for all of those who are like wanting to jump onto this brand new system?
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. In fact, like we often like let people know, like there's a lot of like student orgs and orgs we reach out to where you know, we were like, hey, do you want us to do like workshops? And they're like, oh sure. So we definitely do that. And I mean, honestly, like if you just join the Discord and you're like, hey, how do I do this? Like I would be there and I would help you do it if you had questions.
Yeah,
We're
we'll
also
often code with people, like do video chats and help them out. And
yeah.
definitely like would love to. We do have a lot of written resources too, and we have our own, you know, obviously like we are also evangelizers of YouTube hell, so we do have our own YouTube channel if
We
you want to
do.
get some like tutorials from staff on our team, where we walk
Okay.
through a bunch of stuff as well. So we open source a lot of games too, so eventually we will open source Dungeon Dash, so you can kind of see the pattern and see how it was done as well.
Yeah, and yeah, it's kind of like you know, like we're also revamping our docs too, so we have like a documentation. So there's like a lot of resources, and if you have like ideas, suggestions, anything like that, we're super open to all that. So we'd like to work with everybody. We don't pretend we have all the answers, you know, but we do like to you know, learn from folks who are interested in what we're doing.
Oh,
That's
sorry,
amazing.
yeah, you know what? Let me be silent. I don't want to take up all the time. So go on.
No, I mean that's really great that it's just not just you've created a game, you're also like creating kind of a community of people who also want to create games as well, which I think is really important. Because obviously we, as a lot of the gamers that we know also want to dabble in how to make a game, but the learning curve can be steep, which some people feel. I don't know if it's gatekeeping. It should be because it's just like everyone has an idea, but it's like to take the time to execute it and that sort of thing. It's you do have to learn some of these things, and there is an element of truth in that. But there's also if you want to have fun and dabble in like a game and that sort of thing, there should be, I guess, allowances for that as well. You know?
Yeah,
and it also shows, you know, like everyone these days thinks that great games have to be big budget titles that requires a team of people. And with software and tools like this, we can show that that isn't the case. You know, indie games do
True.
amazing, and some of them are just made by one person, like slaving away in their bedroom, but like they've created something unique and creative, and that's what really breaks the mold. So yeah, getting something like this into the hands of everyone, just so they could dabble and see how good they are at creation, is something great. Yeah.
Yeah, and one thing too that I found is that like indie devs, like a lot of us, like the most important thing actually, it's not like money. Like I think we're all pretty bad at it for the most part. But like you know, we want to help people make more money, but I think one thing that we can immediately help people with is just like getting your game on the web and getting people to actually play it, because I think that's the most rewarding thing is when people actually play your game. And one of the cool things about our gaming backend is it has like an open analytics that anyone can see about your game. And so you can actually filter it to up to a year of activity, and you can see, you know, the interactions in your game, how many people are interacting, and even in real time, you'll see like if someone's playing the game, you'll see that list update. So I'm kind of moving around right now, and you'd probably see, you know, little things pop up in that list below.
Yeah.
You know, yeah. So as people are playing your game, you can actually see the logs, which helps you debug if you're making an online game. And it gives you a sense too, if you look at the activity graph of like, you know, what's your activity like, and like when does it spike? You know, like you can see at the end of the year. Last year we kind of did some promotions in Telegram with some folks that made them want to play the game like quite a bit actually. So we had people playing Dungeon Dash for about like 10 hours a day, some of them, which was crazy. And we were like, you know, we weren't forcing them. It was just like people were that into it at the time. And it was cool to see, you know. And this is like a game that has reached about 1,000 players, so it's not even like a ton of players, because this isn't a game we're like hustling like that. but it's cool to have a window into how much it's being played. And I think that's like a special thing that you get from writing a network game too, is you do get to see even when you're not in the room with people playing the game, you get to learn how people are playing a game and how much they're playing.
Go on, yeah. That's one question to both of you. What genre of game or what type of game would you like to see someone create in that engine in Turbo? Like, obviously you're busy, you can't be making games all the time. But if, now with this tools in other people's hands, what's the like a genre or type style of game that you would like to see someone creating it?
That's a good question. I personally want to see a lot of games that I don't expect, because I like weird games. Like, I think that's one of the coolest parts about indie game development, is that people do things that you'd never see coming. So I don't have a preference per se. Like, me personally, I play Hades 2 early access like a lot. So I'm kind of into games with like a deep narrative, but also like replayability, like roguelike and stuff like that. I'm looking forward to, some other titles that are coming out as well. But yeah, I like to be surprised. Like, we have game developer associates who make games for us, and some of them are really creative. They do stuff that you never expect. One of them, a couple of them made a narrative game called Staring at the Sun. That was one of the first Turbo games, has no online component to it, but it's simply a narrative game. And it's pretty cool. All it is two folks having a conversation in some like lounge chairs out in front of a lake, watching a sunset.
Two folks who haven't, it was like two friends who lost touch with each other after getting in a fight, and it lets you determine how to have the conversation and see the outcome. So it's really about human relationships, which is cool. It's something we could all learn from.
Yeah. And then we have like another game that basically you're making potions. It's called Dreamland. And that one I never expected either, but it's almost like if you took like Overcooked, where you have to like give people, the thing that they're asking for, like with the right ingredients or whatever. This is like a little bit less chaotic, but you're filling up potion vials and handing them out to folks that are asking for these potions. So it's a little bit like magical and a little bit
Oh my god.
like kind of vibey and cute. So yeah, people make cool shit, and I love whatever it is that they're making. If it's good, it's good, and I'm pleasantly surprised no matter what it is.
Yeah, I think for me, what gets me really excited is that I'm not sure if Josiah mentioned this, but you can make over-the-air updates to assets with Turbo OS or backend. So like for Dungeon Dash, we had an original sprite pack, and then we did like a winter edition for that push in the holidays. And one thing that I think that'll open up is like the ability for people to mod and like make more assets for games. And I think that opens up a whole new, universe of creative folks. And I think we'll make communities a lot more just like committed to certain games. So my dream game would be something that's like a game that has a mod community, or you can also have games talk to each other on our back end. So I would love to see like almost like a community driven version of a UFO 50, where there's a bunch of different little mini games all around certain assets, and the results of one game affect the others. So we dog food a lot of product, meaning like we make these games with the intention of creating like examples for other people to work off of, even just like code examples. And so hopefully we can like make stuff that drives people in that direction one day too.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Our gaming backend is a little bit special in that it's not like siloed. So if you're making a game with network features, you can integrate that into other games that people are making. So if I make a leaderboard that allows you to post scores, that's something that other people might be able to use as well. So that makes you have a little bit more of like a resource where it's like if someone made something already, you might be able to plug into it, and it opens up like new gaming use cases where things in one game could potentially affect things in another game, and stuff like that.
Like I would love to see like a Melanin Gamers version of Mario Party. Because I can already tell there's like some I can already tell some rivalries exist back there on the other side of the line. You know what I mean? I think we really got to take this to the arena.
Nice.
You know what would be really cool? Like a triathlon with different kinds of games. That would be so cold. Yeah,
Exactly.
that would be cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
Now
like,
you're picking it up.
yeah, and that's definitely something you could do with like Turbo OS. I think that's like the kind of like pipe dream that we have, but I think it'll be a reality like later this year because once people unlock it, once they realize it's possible, it's like it's just too tantalizing to not do it, I think.
Exactly.
And I would have to win. That goes without saying.
We'll
But
see.
we'll see.
Leah's trying to join the party
Yeah,
here.
dude.
So true. No, that's fine. No, this is
Oh.
actually got my the creative side of my head like actually flowing because it's like
Yeah, no,
like
definitely.
I've seen like games do this, but like not to the like the degree of what like you guys are saying what Turbo can do. So it's like I've seen like different, and I'm like a big fan of like genre clashes of like having like
Mm,
you're playing like Pokemon style games in 1 minute, and you're playing a
mhm.
Space Invader game the next. So and I can see like there's crossover, so it's really got my creative like mind like going. I have to like write down some ideas. But yeah, this sounds really really cool. And have you how much progress have you seen in the adoption of Turbo when it comes to developers, especially in the indie space? Because I know that the indie space probably go wild for something like this to get their hands on.
Yeah, we're pretty like grassroots with it right now. So we mostly work with folks in New York City. And what we do is like we in person have like game jams and stuff like that, but we do online game jams too. So our reach is a little bit like funny because in New York people are starting to hear about us, but we also know we have like communities of developers in like Singapore and Nigeria too. So it's kind of interesting. Like we don't have a full grasp of our like community size. We have a few hundred people in our Discord. We have seen probably like close to 50 games made with Turbo at this point. And so yeah, like I don't have any hard numbers, but it's definitely like gaining some momentum. And what I look for more than like overall numbers though is just like the quality of the games and the satisfaction that people
Of
have.
course.
So one really cool signal I thought was we just released version 0.7.0 of Turbo, and that has like the Aseprite integration I was talking about. It has some features with like, you know, you can do more shader stuff. We added audio support because we didn't have audio before.
That was a big issue. People were
Yeah.
But we're building it from the ground up. So it's cool because like we've had some people who've been in the Turbo community since the very beginning. And look, like the very first game jam we had, like it wasn't the first few at least, it wasn't like the easiest thing to make games. They made some awesome games, but this most recent one, they were like really cooking. And we try to add stuff that they ask for. So that is one benefit of like joining the Turbo community is like we said, we'll help you directly with your game. But if there's things you really want, i.e. like audio, like a lot of people want audio in their game, understandably. So we added that, and we'll just try to build for the community of game devs we have. I will say one really nice moment we had was we did a game jam just for Turbo OS with some indies that was like just about building a network game. And a lot of folks in the jam hadn't built a network game before. In fact, none of them had. And it was only a weekend, and they really gave it their best effort, which was cool. But what was cool is like by day 2, they all had some version of a network game going. And so I think for us, that was really satisfying because what we didn't want to do is build a tool that's like super great, but also so hard to use that like people couldn't actually like get to the finish line. That kind of defeats the purpose of Turbo. So it was nice to see that, okay, we can actually confidently tell people you can build a network game with Turbo of various genre types. People made like fighting games and beat games and stuff like that. And it is possible and it is doable in a short period of time. So that's been really fun.
Yeah. So what I was gonna say is like basically like the signal that I found really cool was we did a game jam recently. It was over a weekend. The theme was like nuts or something.
Go nuts.
Go nuts. Yeah, go nuts. And so we had like people just join the Discord and like, you know, learn Turbo, make games in like 2 days, you know, and then we released 0.7.0. And then some of those same people made games like immediately after we released it and posted. We have like a Built with Turbo channel. So when I see stuff like that, that to me is like we know we're doing something right because it's not about like, you know, like you can look at any number and make it really important. You can sell a number to people like investors or to on social media, but what I think is like the real thing that I look for is like this qualitative, like are people really finding this valuable? Are they enjoying themselves? Are they excited? Can I feel that energy? And so we're seeing more and more of that, which I love.
No, that's great to hear.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's so phenomenal. It's really brilliant, this whole platform and the game as well. And people should definitely check it out. So where can people find you guys?
So we're on Twitter. Our handle is at Make Games Fast. We're also on Blue Sky at Make Games Fast. That's our handle on Instagram as well, TikTok, on YouTube. So you can find us on all the main socials under that handle, and we link to our Discord in our bio too, if you want to find our Discord. And I would say like a great resource if you want to just like peruse all things Turbo is turbo.computer/boost. And that's kind of where we have a bunch of links to like stuff from our games, to our docs, to all sorts of stuff. If you want to just find our main page, it's www.turbo.computer.
Perfect. I will also link that in the video as well.
Yes.
Amazing.
When is the next game jam? Sorry, I just quickly. When is the next game jam? I feel like we have
So
to.
actually, this isn't our next like game jam that we're sort of involved in. It's not an official Turbo game jam. We're actually one of the recommended engines for the upcoming Atari game jam. They're doing a game jam that's a virtual game jam. I believe it's about a week long in April.
Yeah, it's coming up here. It's definitely in the next like couple of weeks. It's the Jeff Minter Game Jam. The dates themselves, let's double check this. On April 18th.
Yeah. And so Jeff Minter just joined Atari again. He's kind of one of the minds behind a lot of their early games. You might have seen they're releasing a lot of their games, like even Breakout and stuff like that. They're re-releasing them with kind of a refresh. So in the spirit of that, they're hosting a game jam that's virtual that welcomes a bunch of different engines, and Turbo is one of them. We will be around for that in our Discord to help people. We have a few members of the Turbo community and the Turbo team participating. So that's one of the ones we're doing, and we plan to do a bunch more throughout the summer. So a bunch of virtual ones, and obviously if you're ever in New York, feel free to hit us up, and we'd love to see you, for sure.
Okay.
So I'll just lay out. So the first one is you've said a lot of great things about Turbo, making it look like it can do literally everything. From where I sit, I have nothing. I don't know anything about programming or anything of that sort. So, what are some of the limitations of Turbo? And then the second question is the sustainability of your company. Since Turbo is free, financial wise, how are you guys dealing with costs, expenses, and all these things?
Yeah, I'll start with the limitations. So the limitations right now, like the biggest trade-off we made is that Turbo has like two parts, right? It has like the game engine and the gaming backend. And so the game engine is 2D only. So you cannot do any 3D games with it. This is purely 2D, and it's really focused on like low res 2D. So the internal sprite sheet memory is like about 8,000 by 8,000 pixels or whatever, which you can fit a lot of sprites on there. But if you're trying to do like 4K HD animations, like that ain't gonna fly. So that's like the biggest limitation. But it's far less limited than, let's say, like Pico 8 in terms of making games like that. And I think the other limitation is right now the gaming backend is hooked up to work with our game engine, but we want it to work with like other game engines as well. So we'll be producing SDKs for other game engines over time. But right now, you basically have to use Turbo to use our gaming backend.
Yeah.
So those are the biggest limitations.
Yeah. Right.
Oh, and actually, and targeting web is like the main thing we have. You can technically make like native executables. So when you're working in development, you're often working in a native window. But our primary distribution right now is on the web. So yeah, those are all the basic limitations.
Yeah. One other thing that is we currently are written in Rust.
Oh yeah.
Over time, we're going to add more languages. We both kind of came from the JavaScript world. I started with like Objective-C. And so for some people, Rust is intimidating just when they hear the word, I mean, look, we've already established I can't read. So like, obviously I'm coming into it limited. I'm illiterate. Rust was very intimidating for me. But I knew some JavaScript. I was a developer for a year, not a good one. And I was like, you know what, I'll give it a shot. And it's actually been amazing. Rust has been really fun to build games in. I think overall, when people like believe in themselves, we've noticed unanimously that they've had a really good experience writing their games in Rust. I think it's not, in my opinion, it's not too dissimilar to Lua. So it's just one of those languages that like with just some practice you can pick it up, and we try to make it as easy as possible. So that's something that I want to make a plug that like no matter whether you're using Turbo or something else, don't limit yourself by like being intimidated by languages as like a sort of bad developer. I can tell you that like you have it in you to learn how to use these products, whether it's ours or someone else, and don't stop yourself from trying. So
Thank you for the encouragement. Thank
of
you.
course. And then I think as far as our business model, so we are venture funded. We raised venture capital from a number of funds here in New York. We've both kind of been in the startup scene for a while, and you know, I think we both had a deep passion for gaming and wanted to sort of like build a sustainable business that can uplift indies, and also, you know, plug into the venture capital startup scene in New York and in the US to help us do so. In the long run, we're a little bit in uncharted territory. Like, we don't have some big brain scheme to like monetize and, you know, like somehow like pivot things into some like crazy ad business or something. We're not doing that. I think what we are guided by, though, is we want to help indie devs experiment with new monetization methods, because we believe that they're getting the short end of the stick in the gaming world right now. And we think the value they bring, both even just like building communities like what MG is doing, but also like, you know, building amazing art, we think that they should be compensated more for it. So what we're trying to do, like that, like I said, we're still early days on it, is figure out a model that can take advantage of our backend network and kind of make it kind of be open and accessible to anyone, almost like what kind of like Blue Sky is doing with the federated network, and try to bring that to devs so that we can put more money in their pockets. And hopefully if we deliver enough value that way first, then, you know, a proper business model for us will follow. So like I said, like, you know, obviously we established in the beginning a little bit, like we're both pretty old. You know, Unc Josiah is here. So
Not that old.
we've been we've been around the scene long enough, and we were lucky to have built enough credibility and built enough trust with our backers that they'll trust us to figure this out with them and with indies top of mind. So hopefully in a year we have a much more nuanced and, you know, exciting answer for that, but we're figuring it out.
Yeah, but we won't charge for the gaming front end, like
Exactly.
yeah, and we want like adoption of the gaming backend, so we're not charging for that either. So right now it's like it's all about basically building something that people love and getting users, and then whatever we do for business, we'll figure out how to align it with indies, so that way we're not like preying on them like everything else in the industry.
Exactly.
I love
You
that.
guys do realize that world domination is on the table. Like, if,
Mhm.
Dude, indie domination. That's
Indie
it.
domination, exactly.
Bro,
It's the
like-
indie guys. We need it. We need
Yeah,
it.
exactly.
All right. Thank you, guys. You guys have been absolutely brilliant. Thank you so much for coming onto this podcast. Thanks, guys, so much. We really appreciate you guys being here. You guys don't forget to check out Turbo and also Dungeon Dash as well. You guys, we've put where to find well, Turbo, I guess, Julian and Josiah as well. I've been here with some of the MG crew in the dock.
Stay safe, guys.
Obsidian Fury.
catch me in that game jam, gang.
Okay. And OG Ataku.
Keep it OG, peeps.
And it's been your hostess with the mostest, Creatively Anzi. Please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, all of that good stuff. And we'll see you guys all later. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.